Hey, what's up, everybody? This is GiftTime and Bailey. Welcome to another amazing episode of Grow Rugby. I'm just really happy to be able to see and to be able to talk to you guys. It's been another good week. It's kind of wild because, obviously in this corona time, we're getting all sorts of news. Nothing really significant, luckily, has happened. I mean, last week was a pretty massive set of news that we got from within the rugby community, but with all these bankruptcies occurring. But, for what it's worth, hey, we're still here. We're still rocking. We're still popping. We'll see. Right now it's just rest time, and just make sure to check that everything is good to go. Guys, I just want to say we got a sponsor. All right. Got to recognize the sponsor, the Rugby Outlet Mall. It is the Rugby Outlet Mall out here working to equip you for freedom and connection on your journey through rugby. Like, they have everything. Rugby Outlet Mall. Be honest, this is our e-commerce site. This is our step to try and be able to give the rugby community something a little different. Not just gear, not just stuff for the field, but it's stuff for your travel. And definitely after the corona is done, we're going to be wanting to move. We do have to take into consideration, we do have a massive job loss to a lot of people, but whenever we get back to the new normal, we're going to be mobile, all right? There's no doubt that the rugby community stays mobile, and for those who are just entering into this and seeing this, we continue to be mobile one way or another. So freedom, connection, growth, and community, that's what the name of the game is for the Rugby Outlet Mall. Make sure that you are able to grab something that can help in that journey, whether it's in reading, whether it's in gear. Please catch some of our HBCU Rugby Classic or GiftTime Rugby gear. Great shirt, Celebrate Rugby, 2 rugby ball mugs. So I think you'll like that one really very much. So please, and you guys can check it out at rugbyoutletmall.com. That is rugbyoutletmall.com. You can find it on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram at Rugby Outlet Mall. Please go ahead, share it, like it, and let us know what you think about it, as well as the podcast. And, of course, I'm always happy to have you guys on here. Please also share and let us know if you guys find this interesting. If you guys find value in this, please go ahead and send us a like. But today's guest is a nice VIP one, a guy who I've been friends with on Facebook for a long time. I had a couple interviews with him way back in the day. We're talking about almost 4 or 5 years, but we'd always been chopping it up on Facebook, social media life. Thiel, former USA Rugby hooker. And you guys, this one was so fun. We had a great conversation. We were able to just let loose, and we got a lot of depth story, a lot of insight into his rugby process and how it's all come out, and talk a little bit about his kids. And it was as much a fun rugby conversation as it was a casual conversation, as was a nerd conversation, and I can live with all the combinations of that. So guys, without further ado, my guy, Thiel, USA Rugby. Check it out.
Grow rugby, grow rugby, grow rugby, grow rugby, grow rugby.
All right, everybody, I got another special guest for you guys today on the Grow Rugby podcast. This is one of the legends, one of the modern day establishments of rugby here in the U.S. It is the hooker of hookers out here. No pimping. And Thiel, man, thank you for taking the time today, man.
Oh, hey, no problem, man. Just coming, like I said, we were talking a minute ago. You'll see some background here. You got some insulation and some concrete walls. But I'm down in my gym. Those that know the no fat Phil know that I retire, then I get fat, and then it takes me a while to get back to not being
come back to form. You got to come back to form. Yeah. It's like, look, you know what you're doing is you're giving people a chance to know that there's hope to come back. You're like, look, I'm gonna get big for you, and then I'm gonna lose it for you. You're doing it for the people. You're a gracious man.
Dude, the first time I retired, I got fat, and then I came back and played, so that helped. This time it's taking me a little bit longer. So,
look, you know, I always say, so in getting into this media stuff, right, I haven't been able to play as much as I would like to. So you always forget, like, not forget, but like the workout plan, like your brain wants to do the typical like performance workout, but your body's just like, yo, we're not, or maybe the other way. Your body's like, I want to do performance. Your brain's like, yo, but we're not really using it like that. Like, do we need to go this hard?
Dude, I do that every time. I'm like, I'm going to go do sprints, and I'm going to do the stuff that I'm used to. And then I'm like, what? Why, though? I'm not trying to run and tackle people that are running at me anymore. I'm not trying to, I guess, run away from people. I never really ran faster than anybody anyway. But, like, I'm not trying to hit people. So, but then I start working out, and I just go, and then I get done, and I'm like, dude, I need like a 3-day nap now.
Right?
So,
it's like, how did I do this on a regular basis?
man, no way.
So, all right. So, like, let's get some quick background, because there's going to be some people who have no clue who you are. There's going to be some people who do, but they're going to be like, oh, I already knew about this with Phil. And we're going to be like, look, this is an origin story, all right? We always repeat it like Batman every time. So, you know, let's kind of kick it off real quick. Like, you got into USA Rugby, but what happened leading into that? How'd you get started on rugby?
Oh, man. So I played football for 1 year at a Division II school in Michigan, Saginaw Valley State, and I was transferring to go to Indiana University. But because I was a transfer from a Division II school, I wasn't going to get a scholarship or anything, right? I had contacted the coaches. They knew I was coming, but, like, I was nobody special. You know what I mean? I was just transferring up from D2. So I spent a year back in my hometown in Traverse City at a junior college. And I picked up rugby from there. Again, I'd played 1 year in high school for fun, played with the Traverse Bay Blues. And, you know, when I was planning on going back to school to play, I was looking at some Florida schools and looking at, you know, going and having some fun and getting back to school and everything, like, you know, to, you know, play football. And they were like, hey, you're 21 years old. Would you rather go, I just turned 21. They're like, would you rather go to England and live in like an abandoned house and play rugby for $100 a week? Or do you want to go, you know, play college football? And I was like, oh man, I'm going to England and live in an abandoned house for $100 a week. You know what I'm saying?
Let that money do the talking. Oh yeah.
You know what I mean? So like I lived off of frozen pizzas for like almost a year and had some awesome roommates and met like super cool people, but I wanted to get back to school. So when I came back to the States later at the end of that year, Scott Lawrence from Life called me up and said, hey, you know, he's from Michigan as well. He's from the Upper Peninsula, and said, hey, you know, we give scholarships. I know you used to go to school. Do you want to go back? And I was only like a year and a half away from my degree, I think, my first degree. So I just picked it up from there. And we were pumping out U.S. national teams players back then. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and, it's almost like there's almost a system that's happening.
There's a system there. And so, you know, I was lucky enough to get noticed and go on a couple of tours and stuff and scrape by for a year or so trying to make the squad. And then eventually, you know, got a break and got to go down to Uruguay and play.
Dude, that's awesome. Like, you know, one of the things that is always interesting to me, especially when it comes to the reestablishment. One, first off, credit to, instead of the spickle span of being, I'd assume arguably on the practice squad, most likely going into a college rugby, if it was a D1 college program.
Oh yeah.
You know, and because, you know, a lot of people go like, oh man, you can make a shine off of that. But instead taking the unbeaten path of going to England, where you get a much more cultural experience. And like you said, you're meeting all these people. Kudos on the decision, because a lot of people would not realize the wide picture on that.
Oh man, it was a lot of fun, and I really, you know, respected the guys up in Michigan, and they had, you know, been playing rugby for a long time. It's a little D3 club, and they're awesome guys. And they said, look, we'll buy your plane ticket over there and we'll spot you like a few $100. And I was like, well, I've got $0, so a few $100 will get me a little way. And they sent me over there, but they had set me up, like they knew I was coming, and it was really cool actually how they set it up. And then when I got there, they didn't know who I was or anything. I didn't really know how to play rugby. I just was like a former football guy that loved to tackle, right? So I went to a couple of practices and they basically told me like, you don't know how to play rugby, but you love hitting people. So we're gonna put you on the squad this weekend on the bench. And I was like, all right, cool. Like it was a semi-pro level, National 3 back then, National 2, I think it is now.
Oh, nice.
And so there was some good rugby players. Like there was good people to learn from. And they put me at prop. I had never played prop, and I just got like smoked horrendously in the scrum for the whole time I was there. But it was what it was. We had some giant second rows, so they kept it from going backwards.
That's good. They had a little bit of help. So wait, what position did you play in football initially? Linebacker?
I was a linebacker. Yeah, I was a linebacker. Yep. And it's like a safety linebacker hybrid in college. Yeah. And I was only weighed like a little over 220. I lost a bunch of weight to try to get faster. And that's when, I was like, oh man, I'm going to go play this position in Division I. I got my head all big. Like I'm going to go Division I now because I can. I played, and it was just like, I never got the chance, but I mean, I got to do, some cool stuff. So.
No, that's fun because, it was very sort of similar for me. For me, whenever I moved into rugby, I was another one of those. Like I played linebacker and running back when I was high school and tried in college. But then whenever I came and played rugby, they were like, well, you don't know how to play. You don't know how to pass, but you enjoy hitting. And I was like, yeah, I kind of do. And so they ended up putting me into flanker. I was like, yeah, just give me the freedom. Let me just throw my head down, put my head down, and I'll go run into some people for a while because at least we know this.
Oh, dude, I played flanker and center and the Traverse Bay Blues, a little team in Traverse City. And when I went to England, they were like, what do you play? Because I'd put some more weight back on to play football again because I realized I had, I wasn't fast enough to play like a safety level at Division I, right? I just wasn't fast enough. So I was like, okay, I'll get up. I put some weight back on. I was like, I'll move back to linebacker. You know what I mean? And I got over there and they looked at me and they were like, okay, first of all, you don't know how to pass or do anything. So we're not putting you in the centers, right? And they're like, second of all, look at our flankers. They were like 6'4", 225. And I'm like, well, I'm 5'11", 250. So,
This might not balance out. This might not be in my advantage.
They said, you're a prop now. And I was like, all right. Luckily, we had like some ex-premiership props on our squad and like our coaches and stuff. So they taught me a lot right off the bat.
So whenever you came out from that England experience, all right, so a lot of people usually go, we played in the States and then we play in a club and maybe they'll be able to have a chance to go overseas and play with an expert level of that. You had the chance to do it almost bounce right away to be able to get that. So when you came back, was it that you were able to get in contact with Scott Lawrence and subsequently your head into life?
Man, he just gave me a call. Like I said, he's from Michigan, and I guess he just kind of wasn't like following what I was doing or anything. Just heard that I was back in the States from somewhere along the grapevine, and that I wasn't going to school or anything. So he just called me up one day, and I think I had gotten back home like a couple of days before, and I was like in my parents' basement, just hanging out and getting ready to go work out because I wasn't sure what I was going to do. I was looking back at schools and stuff and getting back into school and everything. And the phone rang, and it was Scott. And I mean, he's a super, it's Scott Lawrence, right? Yeah. You know what I mean? Even back then, like even 13 years ago, he was still Scott Lawrence. You know what I mean? And so, he calls, you pick up, and he just said, yeah, drive down, man. Car in Southern Illinois. My parents drove me down to the car. I had no money, negative money. They drove me down to the car, and I was like, dude, as long as it's not a stick shift, I'll be cool because I'd never driven a manual other than in England where I stalled out a van when I was trying to do an odd job, which is not awesome. And it was a stick shift. So I stalled my way to Atlanta, right? No joke, stalled every 10 miles and got here and, jumped in and, they had a room for me and I was kind of in it from there.
Dude, that's dope. There's always, people always are wondering how Life University is always picking up these high performing, high character guys. And obviously recruiting comes into it a sense, but the depth of it, it sounds like it's far more reaching than simply just we went out and saw stuff here and there. Assumptively, obviously there was a connection somewhere that Scott had to have heard. It's, or I guess there's not too many American guys who came from playing, National 3 semi-pro rugby in England that, are laying around. So.
Yeah, I mean, he built, and I knew who Life was only kind of after Scott had told me that, what Life University was. I didn't know much about rugby back then. I went to England, I didn't know professional teams. I didn't know American teams. I didn't really care at that point, not to sound like a jerk, but like I wanted to play football before that. You know what I mean? Before I went to England, then I learned when I was over there about stuff. But, you know, I looked up Life and I learned that they had a great history, you know what I mean? And they had some issues with accreditation with school, but they had gotten it worked out. So that was pretty cool. And you know, they had won some national championships and got to learn about some of the guys. And then from there, Scott built us from like, when I got there in 2007, we were like a club, like just like a club rugby team. You know what I mean?
Was it like not necessarily associated with the school, but held the school's name kind of thing? It was.
We people got scholarships and stuff, and it was associated with the school, but it wasn't like not how it is now. You know what I mean? Right. Now with Colton, Dan took over the program, and Dan Payne, and then you know, Colton took over the program from there, and has just built it into, you know, a university establishment, right? Like It's like rugby is like college rugby. It's like, you know, Cal, you know, BYU, St. Mary's, and Life are like the, you know, in Arkansas State. There's other ones in there, of course.
The preeminence. If we want to call it the Mount Rushmores of college rugby in the U.S., that's where you have it.
Yeah, for sure. And like back then, we weren't exactly that. People knew who Life was, but it wasn't the same kind of thing. And Scott really built that up. You know, recruiting awesome guys in from overseas, getting the best domestic guys they could get he could get his hands on, and building guys who no one knew who a lot of our guys were. Right. And guys would come in and they were just super high character guys, and they would just fit into what we had going on. You know what I mean? And they would just be awesome right from there.
Dude, so like whenever you got there, so you now have this elite coaching from England, you have this elite coaching from Life. What were the differences that you had within those? And then subsequently, what was it that kind of just made everything kind of conjoined together for you?
Oh, well, with Scott, one thing that you learned really fast was that like he respects people like super high, right? He's like super respectful of people, but at the same time, you don't like bring in what you like, oh, this is how we did something somewhere else. You know what I mean? Like that doesn't fly because it's his program. And Dan was the same way. And now Colton is very much very similar to that. And it's weird because you almost, you know, coaches like that. And sometimes like, man, I don't like that guy, but you like all those guys, you know what I mean? Because you respect the fact that it's sort of like, it's not their way or the highway. They'll listen, but you don't walk in day one and be like, oh, when I played in England, we did things like, you've been like, dude, get out of here. Like the first training I walked in and I threw up during the fitness session. So that was like, you know, I mean,
that tells you everything.
Yeah. Like he was just like, I got there and I remember he was like, hey, it's good. You know, you're not gonna have to worry about our system. Like, I'm sure you'll be able to fit in and stuff when we get into it. But today's a fitness session with some skills. So like, it'll just be kind of open. Right. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. And I got there, we just started running 300 meters. Like we just started running 300 meter sprints. And I just threw up after like 45 minutes of it. I was like, okay, well, I guess I came to the right place. You know what I mean? So that was like, we used to do stuff like our Mondays would be like 40 or 50 100s with like 25 to 28 seconds. It was just like we, you know, for the rep and the rest. And we would just run for the beginning part of training and then do like a bunch of skills and a bunch of drills and stuff like that. So that's why you saw before, you know, quick shout out before, you know, everything went down is ATL was so fit, you know, the rugby team, the ATL, you know, rugby ATL. Yeah. Scott, you're fit or you go home. That is what it is. You know what I mean?
Which, I mean, it makes perfect sense. I mean, conditioning is everything within the sport, and you especially needing to be able to think at a tired rate. And I'm assuming that's what I assume Scott aims towards, that element where you're just like, look, we want you tired, we want you fit, but we need you when you're tired, your brain to be working in a focus.
Oh, yeah, he's a super cognitive, you know, he's super cerebral kind of guy, you know what I mean? So we would do drills and stuff that were highly technical, and you had to think while you know, after you just, you know, busted your guts running, you know, a bunch of sprints and stuff like that, or doing like super fitness skill work, things like that. Right. Then we would go straight to thinking. And that's when you had to you had to turn it on, or else you'd just be miserable for the rest of training.
It's like, is there still more training left? Bro, we've only been here 5 minutes. What?
I'm like over on the sideline, just passed out. Like, nah, man, I'm done. No.
Oh, dude, I love it. So, you know, you got done. You said you were only at Life for about a year and a half, completing out your degree, correct?
Well, I actually went to Life, so that's when I got my first degree there, but I decided, because when I got on the USA team was like a year and a half after I got to Life, And so I did business. I finished up my business program there, and it was a really small program at Life. But then I did psychology, which almost nothing transfers credit-wise between those, except for like your base stuff. So that was like another 2.5 years or so after that, almost 3 years, because I had to take a few quarters off, like 3 years from there where I still played at Life. But I was going to school for my psych degree, but I would have to take quarters off here and there when we would travel. So
that makes sense. Okay, so one nice setup on the fact that Life has more than just chiropractic degrees, because I feel like that is because I don't even remember the first time I think I heard about Life was actually, you know what I heard first? I heard about Palmer College, and then I heard about Life. Yeah. And so it was whenever I heard Palmer, and I was like, oh, okay, chiropractic school. I didn't actually know that they had rugby. And then the next thing I knew was like Life University. And I think that was maybe 2012, 2011 when I heard about it. And I was like, what's a Life University? I was like, who actually came up with this name? Like, this is the name that you think, like, you come up like when you're drunk, you're just like, you know what? You know what would be a great name? Life. Because you got to really feel it. Life, man. I love it.
My resume looks very silly sometimes because, like, yeah, I got my BS in psych from Life University, and people are like, "Oh, okay, Phil, would you go to school of Hard Knocks or something?" Right. I'm like, dude, no, like it's a real school. Like, it's good professors, and like they take it seriously. Like
they're very real.
Believe me, give me the job, please. But but yeah, it's actually like they've got really good professors, and they've been growing like crazy. Like the old Commons, the housing that we all used to live at, it's all gone. It's all brand new stuff. Like there's 2 different housing for older students, like in the chiropractic program. Then there's like an undergrad housing. They've redone tons of stuff. I mean, they've actually done a really good job, revamping everything and growing the school.
That's legit. How much do you think rugby has impacted the school's growth in that factor? Because I knew once that whenever they redid the field, I was like, oh, there's some real stuff happening over here. And not that it wasn't real before, but like facility change is significant.
Yeah. Well, I think rugby drove a lot of things because we were one of the first. I mean, we weren't even like an undergrad collegiate sport, right? But then they brought in basketball, and they started bringing in women's sports to match, right? And then women's rugby came in, and then now they've got like all sorts of sports. And I think rugby the success that the collegiate rugby team had sort of drove a lot of that, right? Where it's like, oh man, we can be really good at some of these other sports. Like, they don't have football and they don't have NCAA basketball. They're NAIA, right? But they've got like NAIA wrestling now, NAIA basketball, and they're really competitive. So I think that they just kind of realized with rugby being so successful and being able to build that program that they could do that maybe with other programs. And I know Dan had a hand in some of that. Dan Payne had a hand in some of that too. Nice. Even coming from being the director of rugby and working with athletic directors and everything. So.
No, because I always, whenever it comes to developing, like, for me, I've had a lot of focus on wanting to work with HBCUs, and they have a lot of similar setups. Mind you, obviously, there's a lot more of traditional programs, but whenever you're talking about smaller programs, university programs overall, like you have a tendency to not recognize what other out-of-the-box sports can actually help. Versus kind of doubling down on what you already know because that's what you know. So whenever you hear like what Life has been able to do and then the brand that it expands, to be able to see like how rugby was able to at least give some kind of recognition, especially outside the country. Yeah. And domestically, I mean, it's one thing. I think within the rugby community, we're always aware of it, but I can guarantee outside of it, nobody knows. Like it doesn't exist in the echelon, but in most people's, but when it comes to outside and you're dealing with internationals, like this takes it up another level in terms of being able to see a recruitment or see a student base in that. So,
for sure.
Was that the same even within the class times itself, the classwork itself? Like, did you see the same diversity of people coming from different places as it was on the
did. Yeah. I mean, you see it especially in the chiropractic program. I mean, I'm not a chiropractor, but the business program was really tiny when I was there. There was like 7 of us. But psychology was a little bit bigger.
Legends, Phil. You guys were legends of the business program. This is what you said to me.
But like psych, we had a pretty good international flair. And then the chiropractic program, you see it like crazy. Like there's a lot of international students in the chiropractic program, which is pretty cool because I mean, it drew me and Drew guys, from major rugby hubs like South Africa and stuff like that. I mean, we were like a South Africa hub for a while, you know what I mean? Where we had 4 or 5 awesome players that came over to do chiropractic, and they were, they were from South Africa, which is pretty cool.
See, and that's what I'm talking about. Like it's where it brings, and then how it develops the school, and obviously developing the context that go from there, which we'll kind of get into from there. So, all right, so you're a life guy. You're doing it in life. You guys win what? 1, 2 national champions, club championships in that time?
So we won it in 2008. It's like a million years ago. And then we moved up to the Super League in the old US Super League, and we actually lost. When I was there, we lost in the finals in 2009, in the semifinals in 2010, and in the finals in 2011 against San Francisco Golden Gate. All 3 years, man. Like, we could not beat those guys. And they're awesome guys. Like, I love the Golden Gate guys. We could not. It was always so close. We could not beat them. And it would be like, one play here or there, and we just couldn't get past them. And then I retired after that, and then I came back in 2013. I was all done with school and everything, but I came back in 2013 when I just was wanting to play some rugby again, and they were nice enough to let me come train and stuff. And and
you got some experience. You're good. Dude, you're good.
No, first training. Seth Strauss, who's a South African props, I guess flanker too as well when he lost weight. We hit each other, and I was like, "That's like the old days." And he was like, "Yeah, like it's like the old days." And I went and totally threw up on the sideline. Like, no joke. Like, I walked over and just puked. And we were doing fitness. And before that, and we did, like, some conditioning contact stuff. We smashed each other. And I was like, yeah. Oh, no. Just, like, I was gone. That was bad. I remember I got a call, like, a couple days later from the U.S. team, from the coaches and stuff. And they were like, hey, we heard you were back playing. And I was like, oh, no, man. I'm not back playing. I'm just, like, a fat guy. They came out for rugby practice, and like, no, come to a camp. We're doing a camp in Atlanta. Like, just come out. It's it's an ID camp, right? Like, a dev camp. Come back out. Meet some of the new guys on the squad. I was like, all right. And I get there, and I ran like I don't want to say the number on the yo-yo because people that like run that might be like, you know what I mean? Like, but it was really bad. My condition was.
You say your yo-yo test because damn that evil ass test. Bro, I damn the person who created that.
It was like dude, I used to run, and this is not like humble brag. I was like a 17 guy, right? Like as a hooker, like I was pretty happy, right?
Stop being so athletic.
Like I would hit and it was I hated fitness tests. Hated them, but we had to hit a certain number. This was later, right? And before, like I would be like a 17, like either a 16.8, I think, or a 17.1, 17.2 kind of guy. And then I was just like, I'm out. Like I'm done. I ran like a 12.6 or something on the yo-yo. Dude. And I was like, there are like 9-year-old juniors that are running this, man.
Look, I won't lie. Every time we would have practice and, the coach would bring up that we're about to do that beep test. And I was just like, I was like, okay, well, look, guys, I understand that I would always come is like, is there going to be a consequence that comes with this? Like, is it affect how we start? Is this going to affect our play time? No, this is just for conditioning. All right. I think I made it up to like 6 or 7, and I was like, I'm done. Like, but
the beep though, I ran the beep one time, and it was for a South qualifier because the yo-yo is a little different. It's like faster, you go faster earlier on. Okay. They were like the minimum is a 10, and this was when I was younger, and I was just being lazy, and it was stupid. And I like hit it, and I was like, I'm done. And they were like, I mean, it was Coach Huckabee, man, rest him, dude. You know what I mean? And he was amazing. I loved Huck. And he was like, Phil, you going to run a few more? And I was like, no, Huck, I'm cool, man. He was like, all right, we said 10 it in. You know what I mean? And like,
dude, because you're just like, why? What am I proving right now? What am I doing? It just keeps going. Like, what are we doing?
The yo-yo, man, the yo-yo is just sprint. Like you'd start right away, and the really fast guys are really good at it. Like there's been dudes, like I've heard some of the sevens guys have broken the test, right? Some of like the super fast guys, not name drop, guys like Perry Baker, Carl Niles, those guys. I don't know those guys, but I've heard that they've broken the test, right? And I remember Mike Petrie ran like a 23 or something crazy because he was so fit. And Adam Siddall was there, and I was just watching them. I was done like, 15, like 18 reps before that. You know what I mean? Because it counts up. And I'm just like eating a sandwich. Like, dude, you guys are crazy.
You guys are good. You guys are really good.
Dude, you do it so good. But I remember I ran so bad, and like I handed my beep test or my yo-yo test over to Davey Williams, and he looked at me and he's like, "You are fat." And I was like, "I told you." Like I was like 280 something, and he's like, I was like, "Dude, I've lost like 15 pounds
on this test alone."
From throwing up. Jeez, oh Pete. But yeah. So that was yeah.
Right, like, and see, it's always, it's a funny part when it comes to these processes because, I mean, look, it's part of it, it's part of the conditioning, and it shows you exactly how serious it is. But man, at some point you're just like, is this the same? Is this going to be the same as what my game weight? Because I feel like there's a different motivation. Again, it always goes back to it's the motivation that goes behind because it's more of a mental. These are more mental aspects than they are actual physical. Because you know. But I know for me, it was just like I think there was only one time that I really tried, and that was doing it for New Orleans All-Stars match. And I was like, look, let me at least prove I can do this. I refuse to die on this one. I mean, we're actually having to try to get something. So I still didn't do great, but I did enough to pass. And that's
and it was like what we got into later was, you know, with how fit the game is, you know, internationally is like, it was kind of one of those baselines where you'd come into camp and it was more of like two things. One is if you were in competition with somebody, you know what I mean? It was like a check in the box, right? Like, oh, this guy won. Like when Zach Finoli and I were the second time I came around, Zach's super fit, right? And he's pretty tall. And so he would always beat me by like a couple in the yo-yo. And I know that was probably a check in a box. You know what I mean? And we were always back and forth, starting time, everything. Great competitive relationship. He's an awesome guy. And Chris Biller, the first time I was around, he and I were like that too. And that's just a really good competitive relationship. You know, would cheer for each other when the other was starting and everything. Obviously grumpy about it in your head, right? But you knew, you know what I mean? You knew that they deserved it. They earned it, right?
Right.
And, you know, and when I was a starter, then they were the same way with me. We would go back and forth. But like it became that kind of check in the box thing. And then also we had some dudes that would come in and I mean, they would run like what I did like that first time I was coming back in 2013. And it was just kind of like, we're 3 weeks out from playing like whoever, right?
Right. And it's like, yo, you guys aren't there. It's like, look, you guys aren't there. Come on now.
We're like, somebody would come into camp and he'd be like, dude, you're a year out from being able to last 20 minutes against Japan. You know what I mean? Like you're a year out from that, you know? And it was like that. Luckily I got almost a year to get back in shape before I really had to play, more than like, I think the first tour back, I played like 25 minutes the whole tour. You know what I mean? I was there to help close games out in the scrum and to just be a veteran guy on the squad. You know what I mean? Until I got fit enough by like, I think it was like 6 months later.
That's not too bad. I mean, considering coming straight from retirement to that, like that's, especially you're talking about, it's not even like you're talking about retirement to just club play. You're talking about retirement to international play.
Right.
So speaking into that, you know, you get into international play. Now, this is the level that I always have this weird dynamic with because, you know, when we talk about the scope of levels of rugby, you know, here in the States, you know, when we think about levels of sport, we go, you know, it's middle school, elementary, middle school, high school, college, pros. Pros is your echelon. Like that's a peak level, you know. But when it comes to rugby, it's a really weird dynamic because it's like, yes, you got your U19s. That's one aspect. And then the college to club levels kind of mix depending on what level of those you're in. Like sometimes I would argue like a D1 college is a low-end D1 club in the traditional sense here in the States. Here in the States, right? But then professional and international. And it's like the domestic professional versus professional international. Yeah. And you go and question like how do you determine the level of strength? And international gets the range, but people would talk about domestic professional because you think, okay, we're playing against these guys regularly. This is daily workout. So for you, like when you jumped in, I'm going to put life into the professional because you guys did do the Super Rugby semi-pro deal for a little bit. And basically you guys run like a professional team anyways. So like for you, like the jump going into international, what was that like for you? Like, what was that perspective for you?
So like the first jump was not too terrible because we played, and no offense to them, we played Uruguay, right? That was my first tour, was Uruguay, home and away with them, right? And it was intense, you know what I mean? But most of those guys at that point were club guys in like Uruguay, a couple played overseas, you know what I mean? So that was, you know, that was what it was.
Right.
As we started to do this though, you know what I mean? Like it was crazy. I mean, I went from playing at Life one weekend, and 2 weekends later we played the All Blacks.
Wait, that was the 2014 or no, that was
2014 when we played the All Blacks
in Chicago.
Yeah, the one in Chicago. So I played the Maori All Blacks in Philadelphia.
Right.
In the end of 2013, I think.
Yeah.
And it was actually a really good game. Like we did pretty well, and we were missing some of our guys too, but we just, you know, executed okay, and we played really hard, and we defended.
Right.
And we lost for like 10 or something, and it was a pretty good game though. And then that next year we decided to play the All Blacks. So like, yeah, I went from playing club rugby, a bunch of us did, not just me, went from playing club rugby to playing the All Blacks. I mean, that is a pretty big jump.
Like, there might be some leaps on that one.
That's like, dude, that's no joke, from like, you know, standing up out of a chair to being able to fly. You know what I mean? Like that's the size of the leap there. Those guys are like, when you talk about that kind of jump, like those guys, or even like the tiers right below them,
right?
It's huge. You know what I mean? It's a massive jump.
So from your perspective, because this is the part that this has always confused me in rugby. So everything's especially in sports, copycat is natural. Like we say NFL is a copycat league, college is a copycat league because we see what others do and follow it. You know, when you played the All Blacks, and there's one thing to see the All Blacks. It's another thing to be on the field with the All Blacks. And you had already the All Black juniors with the Maoris, essentially, which are just the All Blacks that didn't make it but are still basically the All Blacks.
Still really good. Yeah,
it's like you're ranked high in the world rankings.
Oh, man, they would be a top 10 team. Yeah, the Maori All Blacks would be like a top 10, top 12 team, no problem.
Exactly. So what is it that, from your perspective, that differed them so much from what you played with, whether it's Japan, whether it is any of the D2, whether the tier 2 teams, like what is it that makes them so different? Is it just because they played for longer, or is it?
You know, the funny thing with them is like there's certain teams that we always seemed in my day to do really bad against. Yeah. And it was always the Southern Hemisphere teams. Like the Northern Hemisphere teams, we usually kept it within like a reasonable distance. You know what I mean? Maybe, you know, I know Ireland's gotten ahead of us a few times. Since I've retired, they had a pretty good win against us a couple years ago, you know.
Scotland,
the guys beat Scotland, right? The guys beat Scotland. We had a close one with Scotland when I was playing. You know, so it's usually pretty close though. It's just so fast. And it's almost like, especially then, they were doing stuff when we were still thinking about doing it. You know what I mean? If that makes sense. Like we'd see a ball move and my brain would be like, oh, go get that ball. And they'd already be like, they would already have it and passed it 4 times. And like, you know, there was one, I remember and I don't want to drop names, but I got to hit Sonny Bill Williams a couple times, right? I tackled him once. Me and Adam Siddall tackled him, and it looks like his legs are like bigger than us. And I was like a hooker. You know, Adam was like a big dude, and we're like hidden by his legs, like he's going over top of us. And but anyway, I still remember this. Like they had beaten us on overlap. It was like 50 something at this point. You know, 50 something to 6 at this point. And I'm like, you know what? I was stuck 1 on like 6, and they had beaten us on an overlap. And I'm like, you know what? Forget this, man. Like I saw him coming down for an offload line, and I'm like, I'm just gonna hit him. I don't care what happens. I'm just gonna hit him, and whatever happens, happens, right? Like it's a 6-on-1. Like I don't care. And so I go and I hit him, and I hit him pretty hard. Yeah. Off the side of a ruck, right? Somebody popped the ball up to him from like a breakdown, right? And which they never had breakdown.
Right. It's just like moving, a slowdown of momentum into the ground, but it's still.
Yeah. And so I hit him, and I put a pretty good shot on, and I look down, and the ball's gone, and I was like, what? And I look back, and somebody's in the end goal scoring, man. Somebody's in the try zone scoring. I was like, where did the ball go, dude? And he's just like looking up at me, and I'm just like, what? Like, this is stupid. Like, you know what I mean? Like, and I totally was like, like, first of all, I hit you. You must not even had the ball when I hit you. You probably flicked it without me even knowing it, and now I just did nothing. You know what I mean? Then you scored again, right? I mean, it was
you left
awesome
the gap space open.
Yeah, like I left, 1 or 9 gaps open on that one. You know what I mean? So it was, whatever. But
so yeah, and that's, I guess that's interesting because it again, the dynamic of that seems like it should be so small. Like, all right, what the skill, the thinking of it, but it still kind of boggles just because it is so nuanced, and it just.
It's like you look at it and like one-on-one tackle rate versus those guys. Like, I am stoked. I got the chance to tackle, I think, like Kieran Reed and Artie Savia. I think he played that game, if I remember correctly. He was pretty young then. And like Sonny Bill and all these dudes, right? Like Kevin Mialamu played. He was like my superhero when I first started playing rugby, right? He's like this tall, but he's like 9 feet wide. You know what I mean? And he's like 5'7", like 400 pounds of pure muscle. Like, I don't even know where he puts it. But I got to hit those guys and stuff, and like it was really cool. And we actually did a pretty good job in like the one-on-one physical matchups. You know what I mean? Because you got dudes that we trained hard, and if you put us up against them in like the pre-NFL draft process, we're gonna be like right there with them. You know what I mean?
Right.
But then you put us on a rugby field with 14 of our friends, and suddenly it's a completely different thing. You know what I mean? And then all of a sudden they're a half step past you, and they're fast enough to then outrun you. And their wings are monsters. You know what I mean? And their props are doing like, behind the back flicks out the back and stuff like that. You know what I mean? And you're just overwhelmed by it. And unless you're a team like, say, in England or, South Africa or Australia, whatever, that trains and plays in that environment all the time, it just kind of like, suddenly it was like 60 points. You know what I mean?
Right. And it picked up, because I remember like even for that game, it was like the first half of the first quarter, or the first half of the first half, it was a close game, and then it was like, okay, they scored, and you're just like, wait, how did this get 4 scores up in half of a half?
Oh yeah, dude. Oh yeah. And we went to halftime. It was like 28-6, and we were like, what the heck?
What happened?
Oh, for sure, man. And then like in some teams it's the exact opposite. I remember South Africa at the World Cup, it was like 14-0 at halftime, right? And it was like a reasonable game. We had a couple opportunities. We probably should have put like 6 points on the board. Probably should have been like 14-6. Right. It's like, it was a reasonable game, but it ended up like 64-0. Right. You know what I mean? In Australia, the 2011 World Cup was like 15-8. Like, we scored. I think it was JJ Gaggiano had like a great pick off the base of a scrum, scored. It was like 15-8. And we were like, oh, sweet. And then suddenly it was like 60-8. You know what I mean? And you're just like, how did that happen?
Like, I was gonna say, like, whenever you're in that moment, is it just more of like, it just feels like it just gradually appears? Like, you don't feel the score. You're just like, okay, they scored. It's okay. We're gonna get this back.
Yeah, we'll get one back.
Yeah.
Well, because we're all from, like, if you're a club guy, and now it's all it's all professional guys and stuff. It's awesome. But back then there was such a huge gap between the pro guys and the domestic guys. Just when it came to understanding the game and having those situations, be around situations, we were all the guys on clubs that were like, we never lost. Right. You know what I mean? Like, or if we lost, it was only to each other. Like, it was like Life guys, Golden Gate guys, Nyack guys, Old Blue guys. We only lost to each other. You know what I mean? And so suddenly you're in this scenario where you're like, oh, they scored. No big deal. We'll get the next one. And then, like, you say that 6 times in a row, and you're like, I don't think we're going to get the next one. Like, I'm not sure if we're going to get the next one on this, man.
It's like, this isn't. I saw this going differently in my head.
Oh yeah, and you never go into a game like, you go and you play somebody like the All Blacks, and you're like, you never go into the game like, oh, I hope we can keep it close. You know what I mean? Like,
no, because that would be a loser mentality. It'd be like, no, I expect to win.
Yeah, we're gonna beat these guys. Right. You're like, like after the game, you're like, well, we didn't win, so
So okay, so you went to the Rugby World Cup 2011, Rugby World Cup 2015, correct? Yep. Right. So I had the pleasure of being able to go to this last Rugby World Cup, and that was awesome, being able to cover a seat from the back. So there's 2 things I got to ask you, and this one kind of diverts away, but it kind of comes back all together, so bear with me.
Yeah.
So within my time, whenever I got to go to the Rugby World Cup, and it steadily has been seen over this media time period, it's kind of weird seeing the people that you used to see on TV or you used to see play. Because when you see them play, you're just like, on TV, it's like, yo, they're larger than life. It's like, yo, this is wild. But then when you get to see them in person, again, it's like, yo, this is the person that I actually have been looking for all this time. I've been watching them. But then you see him, you're like, yo, for me, it's become like, man, you're mad regular. You're like spectacular at what you do, but you are mad regular. Like, this is really awesome. And also weird. Like, for you, like when you get on the field, because technically you've been on the field with these legends of the game. Yeah. You know, you get the one-on-one. Whatever the result of the game is, you have had the mano-a-mano with that crowd or that grouping. So for you, like whenever you had that experience of going to the Rugby World Cup, and then, or even whenever you started really playing international games outside of North America, outside the Americas, how did your perception of the game or the people that you played adjust with you're playing against them?
Well, luckily, like, I guess for me, I'm one of those people that when I see somebody across on their side of the field, I'm like, oh, they're not that big. You know what I mean? Like, ain't nothing. You know what I mean? Like, oh, Kieran Reid, he's not. You know what I mean? Like, whatever. Like, they're not that big.
What's a 6'5"?
Unless you're like standing next to Samu Manoa, then you're like, this dude is huge. Like, this dude is an enormous human being. But like, no, it was. The weirdest one wasn't even like with international rugby. It was when I had a really short period of time at Saracens. I was there for like 6 weeks, played in a bunch of the A-side games and traveled for, I was like the 24th man for the premiership games. And it was when Schultz Brits was away with South Africa. Anyway, so luckily Hayden Smith and Chris Wiles were there, and the coaches were like, hey, do you know anybody that we could bring over that would be willing to come over? And they were like, oh, yeah, Phil, come over. You know what I mean? So I fly over there and, like, hung out, and it was a great time, played a bunch of rugby. It was really cool. Anyway, the coolest thing, though, was, like, living in that environment, but being around the dudes, like, guys, again, like, I'm saying too many names, but guys like Owen Farrell, you know what I mean? Dudes like Jamie George, but, like, guys like that, like, Owen Farrell, I mean, he gets a bad rap sometimes. Yeah. But he's just like a nice crazy, regular, nice dude. You know what I mean? Like Chris Ashton was like, you know, the splashed in, like the whole thing. He was like a super nice, just goofy guy that like I remember he had a book, and on one of the bus trips, somebody had bought the book off Amazon for like $2. And they were like, will you sign this for me, Chris? And he was like, shut up. You know what I mean? Like, and they were just cracking on each other, and it was just like, you know, it was just like all the rest of us. You know what I mean? I know that sometimes, like in the States, we get these larger than life ideas with like athletes because they get paid so much. Right. You know what I mean? And I don't know if like the soccer guys over there are like what you might think of that because they get paid so much. But like the rugby dudes make great livings. Don't get me wrong. I mean, the guys that are higher up, they make great livings. But like they're just normal dudes. Right. You know, I'm there for a couple days, and these guys who I super look up to that are on the England squad, you know, even though they were younger than me, like Jamie George, Mauro Itoje, you know what I mean? These dudes were like, hey, Phil, you want to go grab a coffee? You want to go do that? You know what I mean? And it was like just to be polite and get to know me because I was some new guy there. Right. You know what I mean? And it was just like it was really cool. Like they were cool dudes, you know.
Dude, and see, and that's the part that it's saying, like it always has me going back, and it's put me into this like kind of headspace on how we always are viewing, like you said, these people in prominent positions or in high spotlit positions, because you go and you're just like, yeah, they say this about him in whatever the media or in some word of mouth mechanism, and then you go meet the person or you see the person in their environment, you're like, yo, these two things aren't matching up here. Like this, like, yeah, they can be intense on the field, but like, yo, they're cool. Like, yo, she's mad cool. Like, there's nothing like what you're saying. Where's this attitude? I'm a little disappointed by the lack of real.
I need more sass from this person. Right? Like, I don't know. And it seems to like always be like that. You know what I mean? Like not always. I'm sure there's people that are totally
probably some, but like the percentage of what is said to be it versus what seems to be the actuality never seems to match up correctly.
No, it doesn't. And that was, I think one of the first times I learned that was when we played Ireland. It was the first game of the 2011 World Cup. And just like those guys were like super cool. You know what I mean? Like it was, Brian O'Driscoll was playing then, and oh gosh, I'm gonna be so mad because their hooker, who's their captain forever, and I'm blanking on his name. I'll think of it later and then I'll yell it out. But I got his jersey, and like I should go look at his jersey. But they're just like they were such nice guys, you know what I
Right.
mean? And even after the game, I mean, it was a reasonably okay game. I mean, they beat us by like 3 tries, and they were just really cool. Everyone's there like, hey, like, do you guys want to go get a beer? Because they had a little layoff, you know what I mean? And
Yeah.
we were turning around and playing again. But do you guys want to go to beer? Australia was the same way. Like Quade Cooper was playing for Australia then, right? He gets a bad rap. Him and a couple of dudes come into our locker room after the game, and were having a couple of beers because they had like a 10-day layoff after our game, and we were turning around and playing. And they're like, "You guys want some beers?" Like coming in and being just really cool. You know what I mean? And like dudes, these guys get bad raps just because whatever, right? But then you meet
it's
them.
a perception. There's a perception that has to be.
Yeah, and then you meet him, and you're like, "This guy's like." Is really nice dude. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? I don't know him like personally or anything, obviously.
But it's a little bit. It's just like, yo, look, like, yo, we had a conversation, or we got to chill, or we got to see, like, we converse, like,
yeah,
it's dope. Yeah, it's been something that has been like not maybe bothering me, but I have gone into deep thought process of everything that happened when it comes to that position. So, all right. So I wanted to kind of get into what happened now kind of post-career, because this is the part where it becomes very interesting, you know.
Not very interesting, I promise.
All right, Mr. Father Man, look, you're gonna take some pride. No, I'm playing. But whenever you come into your second retirement, all right, you've played in all these games, you've pretty much set your stone within the rugby space, all right, and you get into retirement. What was what you've done post rugby? How has rugby impacted any of what you've done post rugby in terms of people you've known or kind of the interaction within that scope?
Oh yeah, it made it way harder. And I was actually, it's funny. I was talking with my wife about this the other day, and we chat about it sometimes. And like I've talked with other dudes about it, is like going from like rugby or any sport, right? Any sport. It's kind of like you're not necessarily especially rugby, because I wasn't a full on professional or anything, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right. But it being like your life to then going into like a normal working situation, you're just like, dude, I'm sure my boss is not listening right now, but he's a friend of mine too, which is really cool. But if he'd be like, yeah, probably. But like, if I
we're gonna spotlight this moment that you're saying right here.
This exactly. But I'm like, if I sit through one more meeting, like I'm gonna kill somebody. You know what I mean? Like I just want to go tackle somebody, or you know what I mean? And like that's where it's so different, because the guys that do go from being full-time professionals,
mm-hmm.
like going into maybe they didn't make enough money in their careers, as a rugby player, to just be done, right?
Yeah.
Or just pursue business interests that really interest them. You know what I mean? That they go into a normal kind of working world, you just like, you do it and it's cool. And like, I love my job's really cool. I solve problems and I help people and I work for a software company. Like it's cool.
Right.
But like, it's just so different, you know what I mean? Like my day is very different than it used to be. Or day after a long time, it's been very different than it was before. But,
I assume coming from outside to coming inside the room, going from wearing the polo or the practice jersey and getting ready for game day versus the corporate more so environment.
More corporate-y kind of stuff. Yeah, I mean, I work from home, so like this is like my work shirt. But it's just more like, I mean, you get if you get the chance in your life to run out in front of like 70,000 people or whatever was at Soldier Field, right? Or like 40, 50,000 people at the World Cup, or 20,000 people in Philadelphia when you're playing somebody.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like when when that stuff doesn't happen, and then also not even so much that, like the fun recognition part. I mean, that's like the reward, right? That's like the fun part. But like even the bubble, like the work bubble, you know what I mean? Of like train, improve, bubble, just repeat, train, improve, repeat, train is like when you don't do that anymore, you've got to try to find something to kind of like
fill that time,
fills that a little bit. So that's why I coach, you know what I mean? And I play some still for fun. I play with Old White in Atlanta. And
God, I always had issues with old white Atlanta. Like, I don't know why. That was like the one rugby club that we'd always play in the playoffs for D2. It'd be the first one, and for some reason, I just had beef with them. I mean, I'm good with them a little bit, but you know what? It's me and really the city of Atlanta. I think this is a Louisiana Atlanta.
Oh yeah,
thing. Yeah, like it's
sure.
just like it's an innate beef that just
For
goes
sure.
along with.
For sure. It's like move Mississippi and Alabama out of the way.
Out of the way. Like,
let's
yo,
just
we got issues, but this is a good beef, but it's like I have to have an issue with.
Yeah, for sure. No, for sure. And like, but I last time I was in, we played New Orleans with Life in 2000, 12, 13?
Yeah.
No, 14. Up in Wisconsin, though. They took us from New Orleans and Atlanta into Wisconsin. We played for the Elite Cup Championship.
Oh, okay. I remember what you're talking about. Yeah. Whenever they were trying to do the weird gold cuppy or something like that.
Yeah. And it was like one of the in-between competitions that had been put together.
Right.
New Orleans won, their bracket. We won ours. And we ended up playing in Wisconsin, which was weird because, like, why didn't they just bring it down? Make us travel up there. But yeah, that was the last time I played those guys. But man, the New Orleans guys, I've known a lot of guys from New Orleans and players and stuff, and they've always been cool dudes. So I've never had any issues with those guys.
It's just like I said, it's just a city. Like for me, it was just I always tell people that me and Atlanta, because again, old white, there was nothing innately old white ever did wrong. It was just like there's just something about it. It's just something about it. But like Atlanta is just a city that I've always had this long-standing like love-hate relationship, because there was a point where every other time, and I went to Atlanta a lot for some odd reason. I think a lot of it was going to see like Life games or something like that. I always ended up being out there, but it was like I would go and there would always be like intermittent situations where it was like a bad situation. It was like my car got towed, and then I had to go walk over to the tow dealership. Actually, that happened at Life. That actually happened at Life. They told me, and I didn't have my battery went dead on my phone, and I was like, "Yo, I have to walk over."
I'd have been mad too. I'd have been mad at New Orleans if that happened. You know what I mean? Like,
bruh. it's the same. It was just always little things. But now, like Atlanta and I, the last couple times I've been up there, like we had a good relationship. Like it's tentative, but it's like everybody's at a stalemate. We're at a good stalemate with this.
Right. Oh man, Louisiana and I. The problem with Louisiana and me is, especially New Orleans, right?
Yes.
I know there's lots outside of New Orleans in Louisiana. I've been to Baton Rouge, and I've been one other place when I was young. But New Orleans and I have a problem because your food is too good. And it makes me want to eat it, and then I eat a lot of it. Like my wife and I went to New Orleans in like 2012 after the World Cup. Like I had tons of points, right? I had all these points, and the whole stay was free, and the flights were free, and we were broke when we left because I spent so much money eating a tiny bit, drinking a little bit back then. And the food was so good.
It taps up. And that's the funny thing that comes even whenever we're traveling. And I'll even put it into international travel as well too. But New Orleans, I have to sometimes, especially in Louisiana, I have to get used to sometimes how to function outside the state, because the state usually it just has different rules than everywhere else. Like when I used to drink a lot, like it was like I had to remember, yo, don't bring your cups outside of the bars. Like this is not a normal thing. Like, or like
this is New Orleans and Vegas. That's it.
Right.
New Orleans and Vegas.
It's like this is not normal. Like I'll start walking. I'd be in like Birmingham, or I'd be in Memphis, and I'm like, oh no, Biggie. And then you get this guy who's like, stop. Hold up. What do you got? I'm like, what's going on? I didn't do anything. I paid. Like, you can't take that outside. Oh, right. And then even with the food, it's like, it's not super expensive. So you're just like, it's easy to generate, but it's definitely not built for health. So
no, dude, some po' boys. You hit me with some po' boys. Give me half and half, shrimp and crawfish, and fry it up, man. Put a little extra lettuce, a little remoulade on that bad boy. Dude, I will eat that like there's no joke. I will go wild on that. Like, make it sloppy, too. I got to have extra remoulade on that.
You got to make sure it has a good amount of special. That's how you know the difference between a po' boy and just a sub sandwich with some meat in between. You know?
for sure. And I ate those. We went to this place when my wife and I were there, Park something or other. It had been shut down after Katrina, and they had just reopened like the year before we went.
Yeah.
And it was like it was the only like famous po' boy place that we got to go to. And I ate like 2 or 3 of them. I had like the garbage, whatever, lunch, whatever the heck it was with the roast beef. You know, you get like the roast beef one. And then I had the half and half. Then I had like another half and half. Dude, it was crazy. Like that's why I got fat. Like it's not like a mystery. You know?
It's like, look, it's like, I'm glad I got broke a little bit out there because this food would have just kept coming in and coming in. And that's literally a big stop. It like
you can't make me rich and put me in New Orleans. Like it's not good. It would not be good.
Oh no, man, I love it. Well, dude, I don't want to take up too much more of your time. Actually, I do want to take up as much time as possible, but I'm going to let you not take up too much of your time. But I want to ask, kind of closing out, throughout your career as a rugby player, and then how you came now, you're a dad, your husband, you're working, and it's IT essentially that you're working in, right?
Yeah, I do software stuff. Yeah,
software,
yeah.
Right? And then you have your business as well too.
I did before. I had a little fitness studio. I sold it a while back, and am done with it for now. And I do some software and like web dev stuff on the side too.
See, the ultimate educated, the athletic nerd, right?
Oh, dude, I'm a total nerd. I can't. The athletic part has just dropped. It's gone. It's just nerd.
We just went full nerd. We're just like, look. We did enough athletic. Let's go full nerd.
I'm like breathing heavy walking up the stairs. I'm like, what is wrong with me? I'm like, screw it. Let me go type some code and drink a bunch of coffee.
Well, look, quick nerd thing, because before I go into my closing, because I know I got to let you go into closing. All right. I always laugh because whenever we talk on Facebook, we will either go into something with movies or whether we're going into that. All right. I do need to ask, what is your top 2 movies that you watch?
Oh, man, that's rough. Like,
coming in with it.
Dude, anymore? I mean, shoot, it's like all Disney or Pixar. You know what I mean? We got the 9-year-olds.
So you use Disney Plus well?
Oh, dude, all the time.
Dude, look, I've been having the hardest time. Not because it was anything wrong. It's just like I always look into Disney Plus stuff, but then I'm like, am I in the mood to watch it? Like, I know it's one of those, like, once you jump into it, then you're like, okay, I'll go down the tunnel. But it's like, yo, am I in the nostalgic mood to jump in?
Dude, they got, like, The Mandalorian is super sweet. Like, if you're Star Wars, if you like Star Wars stuff.
That was dope.
We have, like, every streaming thing at the house, though. You know what I mean? Like, so we try to find something. You know what I mean? But, like, dude, the movies one, dude, Man on Fire with Denzel. My favorite movies of all time. Like, that's a dad movie. Like, that's, like, if you're dad, like, that's it.
I put that one over Taken as well too, because a lot of people back to Taken, and I'm like, no. Man on Fire. My heart protected with the gunshot wounds.
Dude, Denzel is like wild in that movie. Like for sure, Man on Fire, and then like, oh man, we watch Moana, dude. We go to Moana like hardcore.
I'm not gonna lie, that one. Look, there's one. Okay. All right, I'm gonna tell something that I don't always tell a lot of people. Actually, I lie. I tell this to everybody. But I'm a massive musical fan, especially when it comes from animated musical stuff. And Moana, the music on that was amazing.
Oh, dude, that music's awesome.
It's so good. And so, like, for me, it goes like the story was already amazing by itself, so good by itself. Yeah. And then you add that in. Like, I've watched that movie 5 or 6 times just simply because of the fact that it's just, like, it worked.
Dude, that movie is like it's amazing. Like when she hits that last wave getting out of the lagoon and then the grandma comes and she's the stingray, dude, that's no joke, man. That's and the chicken, dude, I laughed the hey man. I can't. That movie just put together, and like The Rock kills it, and like it put together like crazy. It's a good movie, man. The last one my daughter loves, the 9-year-old one is Tangled. That one is that we watched Moana.
You brought her back to Rapunzel. You're just like,
dude, those two are like, and I mean, those are the 2 go-tos. You know what I mean? We watch the other ones too. We love the other stuff, but those are the 2 go-tos.
So she didn't have the connection with Frozen. I'm happy for you. You didn't have to get overtaken by Frozen. You got taken by the original.
Yeah, she liked Frozen, but no, her Disney princess, man, was Moana for sure. And like the other, she likes kind of like the hardcore ones. You know what I mean? Like she likes
no whining, just like, yo, I'm gonna get it done. I'm gonna get it done. Wait, have you shown her Brave yet?
Oh, dude, she loves Brave.
Okay,
dude.
I was gonna say like that has to be part of the list.
Her top one is like 12 movies. You know what I mean? Like her top two is like 15 movies. You know what I mean? Like Brave, dude. Princess and the Frog, dude. She loves Princess and the Frog. The music in that is super good too.
Yeah, you know what? It doesn't get as much praise. Like I think
it doesn't.
Look, my issue, I think, that ended up being with Princess and the Frog was that they didn't make it Pixar. It was like, I know you're trying to go back to the old school, but I was like, yo, we passed that time. That was 2010.
I got you.
You know?
I got you. And they could have gone that way too, but she loves the music, and it's got, I mean, that's New Orleans, right? Like that movie is, you know what I mean? It's got that feel to it.
It does. They did a good, like, that's the thing. It gave you the moments, and it's like, I know that place. Like, I know where they're talking about.
Yeah.
But it was just like it didn't get the critical love just because I felt like they went too nostalgic. It's too nostalgic that they were trying to flip on it. I was like, no, just hold here. You guys can eat a little bit, but just hold. It's
funny, you know that there's a couple of nerds talking when like we go from it's like, oh hey, rugby and all this stuff, and it's like, but these Disney movies though, that's my life, dude. We watch I'll be trying to watch rugby, and my daughter will come down and be like, oh, do we have to watch this? I'm like, no. What do you want to watch? You want to watch Moana? You want to watch Coco? All right, let's watch Coco.
Oh, look, don't even get me started on Coco. Like, Coco messed me up. Coco, dude. Like, that was – look, there's only two shows that have there's only really two. I think I put Pursuit of Happiness on the list of movies that made me cry. But, look – Coco and This Is Us. I don't like feeling feelings like this. And Coco hit me, like when I felt the well up in my chest, I was like, what's happening? I was like, no.
Get out of here. No, man. I'm the worst. I'm the biggest softie ever when it comes to movies and stuff. Like my wife will look over, like we went to Disney last year in February. It was the first time I'd ever been there. Well, yeah. And my daughter was there. And she would have been obviously 8 at the time. And like I had her up on my shoulders. We were in Magic Kingdom, and they were doing like the whole castle fireworks show light thing, and they had like this mix up. And dude, they put some serious like parent moments up there. I mean, they had like Mufasa talking while they were showing like Tiana and her dad, while they were showing like Moana and Maui and stuff. Like they were just weaving these things together, and dude, I was just straight losing it. I was losing it.
Look,
like I couldn't.
I look, and I can see those are why those movies get me, because it's the that father son or mother daughter or mother son. Like whenever it comes to these family moments, like I can push through most of it. I usually, my softness always ends up coming right whenever you show that relationship. I'm not even a dad. I'm like,
dude, it messes me up. Like I don't even want to think back. Like it was crazy. Like my wife looked over and she just started laughing at me because she's like ice cold. She's stone cold. Like she's straight face. Like she doesn't play. And I'm just over there like, it's like I mean, but you can't put Mufasa behind like talking behind, you know what I mean? Behind a bunch of scenes with like dads and kids. Like you can't do that.
Right. No, it's true. It's true. Like you're trying, and I'm sure if they ended it with like the showing of like Bambi's dad coming over the top after, like it's just like, really? Just kill my heart. You want my heart? Here, take my heart. All right? You have my heart. You win. I can't stop the feel.
For sure, man. No, for sure. It was cool. But yeah, dude, that's oh man, my life is like Disney movies. But she's getting into some of the other stuff too, though. She's getting into, we've been watching like, she's like Jumanji, which is cool. Like the new ones and the old one. We watched the old one the other night actually for the first time.
Nice.
And she liked it. She dug it. She likes the new one more.
Like the CGI is terrible, but the story holds up really well.
It holds up. And Robin Williams, dude, I wish, rest in peace, man. I wish that he could be around to be in these new ones with the cast of characters they have. It would be wild, you know what I mean? But like, she's been watching that and really getting into that kind of stuff. So I'm like, I got the other one, the little one's 18 months. I got a whole nother lifetime of Disney in front of me, right?
I can rewind this in, and by the time you get through, then we're gonna have all of the Marvel stuff ready to be able to go.
Oh yeah.
It's like we're just properly inoculate them bit by
yeah.
Phil, bro, I love it. We've been needing to have this conversation. The last time that we had a chance to talk in person, which was I think it was in Houston for one of the rugby games. I think it was against Canada.
Yeah.
So funny story with that. So we did that whole interview, right? And recorded it and everything. Found out that none of the sound came through. So
shoot.
Did this whole thing, and I went back to look, and I was like, no!
Oh, no.
I'm not gonna lie, I use the image a lot. I was like, yo, I use the video a lot. I was like, there's no sound behind it, but we'll use it.
Man, use it as much as you need to, dude.
Yo. But the one question I wanted to have before we had our little nerdgasm, which, man, we're going to end up having this again, not podcast-wise, just a basic talk. But, in everything encompassing, like, what would you say that the impact of rugby has had for you in terms of where you are now and obviously your journey to this point?
Oh, that's a good question, man. I mean, the biggest thing I would say is probably like just the opportunities to have cool experiences that it gave me, you know what I mean, in perspective on different parts of the world and different people and all that kind of stuff. And then also like the amazing people that I got a chance to meet that I would have never met, you know what I mean, if I had not had the chance to go out and be part of, life and the USA team and all those kind of things. And just like, I don't keep in touch with that many people very often, but I know that like if I needed to, talk to those guys or reach out or whatever, you've got this whole network of people that are just like incredible overall human beings, you know what I mean? And they've helped people that I've known from those teams and stuff, and the leaders and everything have helped shape, how I view things and kind of who I've become later in life, you know what I mean? They've helped a lot with that. So that's probably the biggest thing.
Dude, that's awesome. Phil, man, thank you so much again, bro.
Hey, no problem, man. Anytime, dude. Anytime. You need an hour of somebody to just nerd out with, I got you back.
Oh, like, for sure. Dude, big thanks to Phil on his being a part of it. Really appreciated everything that he did. That was a great conversation. Guys, we still got more conversations behind. Please check it out. Last week we talked with Raheem Vital and Mike Toussaint of Prairie View A&M, and we had also guests like Nia Tapper, USA Rugby Sevens. We had Dave Rhymes of Atlantis Sevens and USA High School All-Americans. Also, Kyle Granby and Tiana Granby of Roots Rugby. You guys can go check out those podcasts. Great listens. And, of course, once again, please like, share. You can find us on all platforms. We finally got on the Apple podcast app. So, there really isn't any places that you can't get us. So I appreciate your time. This is GiftTime Ibelu. Continue, please check out the Rugby Outlet Mall, rugbyoutletmall.com. Check out through our catalog, and we got so much more to come through. Love you guys. I hope you guys have a safe, wonderful, healthy week. Cheers.